Hey, it's Andrew, and you're watching Disney Channel. Stick to the end of the video because even though my housing was $0, there were a lot of other ways I saved much more money, hundreds if not thousands of dollars on other costs. Housing can end up costing you up to $100 a day, but hey, guess what? That's just rent here in Silicon Valley. So don't worry about housing, worry about other costs like the cost of transportation, entertainment, and etc. If you want to be able to find out exactly what those are, make sure to stay until the end of the video. Hey, it's your friendly neighborhood Andrew and Professor Meatball, and today I'm going to tell you about my $0 trip to Europe. This is a trip I took May of my very last year in school when I took off 2 weeks right before I graduated in order to explore Europe for the very first time. It was my first European trip. I visited 3 major cities and spent $0 in housing everywhere I went. If you want to follow the 3 tips and tricks that I used to make that trip happen, including other life-saving, money-saving hacks in order to make sure you're safe and having a great time on those trips, as well as learning how to smash that like button for me in order to defeat the YouTube algorithm together, I think you're going to enjoy this video a ton. Make sure to stay until the end because we're going to go fast. Europe! What is Europe? It's a place for refinement. It's a place where you will be able to spend a little money if you're an American and get a long way. Something that is difficult to do in America is tourism. You're having a hard time if you don't rent a car and drive everywhere because most of the time, unless you're visiting bigger cities like New York City, or I wouldn't even consider Chicago a very pedestrian-friendly neighborhood, you're gonna have a hard time visiting cities anywhere else in the world. That's why Europe was my destination of choice as a mishmash of culture and history, as well as the cutting edge of exactly how a 20-year-old can have fun. The 3 cities that I chose were Amsterdam, Barcelona, and Paris. And when I got to Amsterdam, that round trip from Chicago only cost me, wait for it, $300. That's right, $300 round trip from Amsterdam to Chicago. Now, I did have to have a layover in Iceland, but that actually inspired me to go to Iceland later on the next year. So I think it's a win-win either way. So the first tip that is going to save you hundreds of dollars on your next trip is something called theflightdeal.com. That's what I used to snag that $300 Amsterdam deal. And it is a website that is continuing to put the best deals possible from whatever city you are in to amazing cities around the world at the cheapest possible price, updated on a daily, weekly cycle, and you're going to see a lot of bang for your buck if you continue to keep track of it. The best part of this is that you can buy flights up to a couple months, if not a year in advance, which is going to be helpful because I don't think we're going to be traveling a lot in the pandemic anyway. Right now, as I'm looking through it, I see $373 from San Francisco to Managua, Nicaragua. I see San Jose to Kona, Hawaii for $176. I see Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic for $285, and the deals get better and better from there. Flight Deal used to be the hottest thing before Google Flights had an upgrade in its own software of getting to pair you with the best possible prices as well. You can go to Google Flights right now, and you can also look up very similar deals to the Flight Deal, although it's not curated by a human, it's curated by an algorithm. So take that as you will. You may trust an algorithm just a little bit more, although it is Google, so they are going to be tracking all of your flight information. This is not going to be my 3 main tips. It's just going to be a side tip, which is make sure that you are always browsing in incognito and switch up your VPN from time to time. You want to make sure that your sessions are not being tracked as the same person because your flight information prices will go up, and that is a fact. Just how plane tickets work these days and have worked for decades. When I snagged that $300 price ticket from America to Europe, that was the hardest part of the journey in terms of cost because to get around in Europe is very cheap. Back in the day, there were dirt low prices for tickets throughout Europe. In fact, one of my favorite examples is Ryanair. Now, this wasn't exactly this trip, but the trip I went to Barcelona later on the next year, I was able to get a $7 round trip from Barcelona to Ibiza. And then another $7 round trip from Ibiza to Mallorca. Being able to return to the same Airbnb in Barcelona after taking a day trip to those major cities for only $7. That's just the price of a bus ticket that takes us all the way out to these amazing exotic islands was the real deal. And I found those prices on Google Flights. So that remains my number 1 tip. Make sure that you are leveraging Google Flights and theflightdeal.com in order for you to find the very best trips and plan your worldwide sightseeing around those websites. The fact is, you are going to see the entire world. That's a guarantee. So if you really wanted to see London this year and Japan the next year and Egypt the year after that, just try to shake those around based on how the prices are. Go to the cheapest places first because you're going to see it anyway. Don't worry. My second tip of how to keep your trip $0 is to be able to take in the sights of the city and the history and the culture with a walking tour. Almost every one of these major European cities had a walking tour. They meet every single day at the exact same major location in these cities, and it's a $0 tour that you get to have immense wealth of knowledge with these tour guides. Now, you would probably want to toss them a couple of euros on the end of the tour because their hard work pays off. They really tell you as much as they can about their part of their culture as well as the culture as a whole. So I recommend you to toss in a couple dollars, but that is a way that you can keep your entertainment cost as low as physically possible. These walking tours are not only for Europe, I was able to do them in South America as well. I remember in Valparaiso, which is a city outside of Santiago, we walked on a walking tour of almost the entire city. We took an actual bus with the locals, and then we had the local Jota, which is Coca-Cola and red wine, and they just had it ready at the end of the tour, I guess, to be able to share us not only the culture, but get us loose for the tips section as well. That Chilean version of Coca-Cola and red wine was my very first interaction with that flavor palette before I even heard about the Spanish version Calimocho. The best part about walking tours is that it's essentially a tourism company bringing you along all these sites that you can then buy tickets into later if you really wanted to see this museum or be able to gain entry to this historical site. Finally, the most important part of these trips is that you get to talk to the locals and find out where the parties are happening later on. Now, I cannot vouch for how much these nightlifes can cost, but that is going to be part of my second tip, which is to make sure that you look for bundled bar crawls. Pub crawls, bar crawls, whatever they're called. I was able to gain a lot out of these bar crawls because they not only show you the different kinds of pubs and bars that happen around the city, but you also get to connect with the nightlife and actually see other tourists or expats that are living the life with you. They're very cheap. They can end up being like $15 for a bunch of different free drinks at all of these pubs. And the main way that these pub crawls make money is by introducing new locals or tourists to these pubs in exchange for a little cheaper drink at the door. That can keep your nightlife prices way down because as it ends up, the tourism places that you usually end up without a guide can cost you a pretty penny. So this is probably a way that I made back hundreds of dollars based on just drinks at the bar or bottle service that I didn't have to do. I had fun getting to know people just like me, or perhaps even Americans that were traveling from different cities, and I could just get to know them as well. And finally, like I promised, the most important part of my $0 Europe journey is the fact that I was able to couch surf. Warning, I am not an expert couch surfer. I've only done it really just for this trip alone. I was able to get a 3-day couch surf in Amsterdam, then a 3-day couch surf in Paris, and then finally a 3 or 4 day couch surf in Barcelona. So my entire trip was 9-ish, 10-ish days, and it ended up being an incredible experience because each of the couch surfers welcomed me into their homes and treated me like an honored guest. And the cost? $0. The way that couchsurfing works is you go on couchsurfers.com or couchsurfing.com and they show you a list of people who are willing to open up their homes to you. Now, they usually ask for nothing in return. I always bring a nice gift, something that reminds them of China and Chicago. That's two parts of my culture that I like to share, but you don't have to say anything but thank you when you coordinate with them. 2 out of the 3 of them actually met me at the airport, so they even drove me to their homes, and all 3 of them were people that I ended up eating and drinking and partying with. It was just a really good time. If you wanted to host, you can do this right here in America. Usually the best way to be able to build up a profile on Couchsurfers is to get a bunch of reviews on your profile that say people actually were hosted by you and they had a great time. This shows other Couchsurfers that you are giving back to the community as well, and it will increase the chances of you being accepted into someone else's home. 2 main caveats about Couchsurfing. One, it was not the pandemic when I was Couchsurfing, so be incredibly careful. And that's all I'm going to say. Does that mean don't couch surf at all until the pandemic is over? Does that mean don't share your home at all until the pandemic is over? I want you to follow the guidelines that the national health organizations in your country are making you follow, and be courteous to the entire world as you contain the spread. Number two is that I was a college-aged grad student-aged male, and I was able to receive a lot of goodwill from people who wanted to learn more about my studies and empathetic to the fact that I didn't have a full-time income to support myself when I was traveling. So this could have lended a lot of credence to my story, and at the very least protected me from unwanted harassment. Sometimes cultural barriers exist, and not every host is incentivized in the best way to treat their guests with the same level of respect. Traveling alone is always a risky gamble, but it's slightly less risky as a cis male, so I have to say that in that sense, be very careful when you're traveling alone, just because not every human is the best human out there. All that said, I hope you had a lot to dissect about my story here. I hope you have stories in the future that you would like to share with me. If so, then go ahead and screenshot that video, tag me Andrew Mo Money on Instagram, on TikTok, on any other social media platform. I'm Andrew Mo Money everywhere. And leave a comment down below about exactly where you want to take off when the pandemic is over. I think that all of us could use a little break from the everyday. Today's trivia question is about world finances, and especially international finances. Which currency is the strongest in the world in terms of exchange rate? As in, if you try to exchange one of your currency for this currency, you'll always get back less than 1 unit, no matter where you're from. Leave your answers down below and I'll pick someone to give a shout out to, as well as a free consultation to data science, personal finance, travel, otherwise. As always, you guys are very appreciated here. Thank you for staying all the way until the end. You guys are awesome. See you guys in the next video. Make sure to watch this one. I'm going to recommend one right after this end screen, so I hope you stay after for that. As always, for now but not for forever, peace.